Namaste and pranams. I'm your Chitti Media host, Shrikant Sharma, and today we'll be talking about the passing of the Queen Elizabeth II at 96 years and the huge legacy she leaves behind, plus, also about the new British Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Today's current affairs show, I have a very unique thinker and public speaker who is happy to share with us his insightful views, Pandit Satish K. Sharmaji, a senior British Hindu leader. His inclusive narratives and worldviews have been beneficial to many people across the world. His thoughts give colorful wings to many thinkers' latent thoughts on a wide range of issues, ranging from Vedas to current affairs. Panditji, namaste.
Pralam Shrikanti, Jai Shri Ram to you. It's a pleasure to be on your show today, even though the subject is a little bit sad, and we have some thoughts to share and to talk about. As you have said, our tradition, we believe in Punarjanam, that the Atma doesn't get destroyed, that it persists and goes through learning lessons from lifetime to lifetime. And so we have a wonderful way of navigating this difficult time. When you accept and it becomes your reality that the body is a transient vehicle, that the personality and the identity is like a vessel that you use to navigate life, but the Atma, the essence of what you are, transcends mortality, then it lessens the pain, it lessens the separation. And we have that perspective to contribute. So in addition to adding our condolences to the family of Elizabeth Windsor, we can also offer them a bit of support and a bit of guidance, and ask Padmatma to bless the family with wisdom and strength so that they can put this natural part of life behind them and move on and continue to serve as the country and perhaps their own close circles need them to do at this time.
Indeed, Panditji. Panditji, it's very difficult to find another speaker in your place. You have been a part of the active British public life for past several decades. You have met the Queen on several occasions. You've had dinner with her and also enjoyed a couple of garden parties at the palace. And hence, I'm looking forward to your dissection, your analysis of the subject. Also, I'm not just referring to the exponentially increased traffic on the social media when I say the world is conveying their mournings in different ways. It is a different and difficult subject, but a mixed range of messages that different countries and communities are sharing on the media is interesting. For all our listeners, I just have to inform that this is a brief talk, and Panditji, I'm aware, is working on a longer and a more comprehensive show that will probably be aired and made public post the mourning period. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. As you've mentioned, this was not just an ordinary woman, not just an ordinary mother and grandmother. Although at this moment in time, we're sharing our support and best wishes with the family, there are two other dimensions to this individual who has passed. One is that she was the head of state for the United Kingdom, Great Britain, as well as many other countries. But equally, she was the head of the Commonwealth. And there are complicated relationships which are all going to be impacted upon by her passing. And the exploration of those, I think, warrants a quieter time. So once the 10 days of mourning have passed, we can reconvene and then perhaps start to scrutinize what the evolution was, her successes, of which there are many, her failures, which there are, I think, one or two very, very significant ones, depending upon one's perspective. And we will do that in the weeks to come. But today, I think it's a great idea to focus on the person and what she did, the world that she found herself entering, the challenges that were presented to her and how she navigated those. And then I think we can look at the peripheral issues at a later point. What you have said, though, is correct. At this moment already, there are a variety of sentiments being expressed. I'm not sure if your viewers have picked it up, but in Jamaica, where William and Kate visited a short while ago, they'd expressed their desire to be independent. And the Jamaican head of state has issued a statement which is only 3 sentences. And it was quite interesting. In that letter, he refers to Her Majesty and her subjects, not referring to her as Our Majesty, not referring to her as their Queen. They sent their condolences to the people of the United Kingdom and her subjects, which is an interesting way of putting it. In addition to that, the Bahamas, who have declared independence, they sent a very short note just acknowledging her passing. So the Commonwealth angle is going to be one worth looking at in more detail. But you're right, at this moment there are very mixed sentiments. There's a huge outpouring of support for the family. As you know, in the United Kingdom, she has enjoyed the position of being sort of everybody's mother or grandmother remotely. And so there is an emotional attachment there, and that is really being expressed and felt. Flowers are appearing in huge quantities at Buckingham Palace, also at Windsor Castle, which is just down the road. And the nation is entering this period of 10 days of mourning.
Thank you, Panditji. That was a very insightful journey into what you were thinking. The Jamaican statement couldn't have. The timing is really interesting, and the choice of words, as you have mentioned. And we are. You have a large fan base across the world, Panditji. We are looking for the larger version post the mourning period that you have promised, or that I have promised on your behalf. But moving on, Queen is a central person to United Kingdom and England, and to the many Commonwealth countries. She is known to take care of her citizens, and her sense of duty, grace, elegance is unparalleled to many. She's taken an active role in the Second World War, both as a driver and a mechanic in the home front. Her role in the Northern Ireland peace process as a unifier is unquestionable. Can you throw some light on her Seva aspects?
Yeah, well, you've touched on a wide range of events in the history of Her Majesty. The range of life that she has experienced, if you think about it, she came into this world at a time when phones were a newfangled thing, long before iPhones and smartphones and many inventions she will have seen. She lived through the swinging 60s. She was born into a time of very rigid social hierarchies. The class system in the United Kingdom was known for its rigidity. The commoners and the royals, well, a veritable caste system, as I've mentioned on many times. You know, she's navigated her way through the talk of Scottish independence and the possible breakup of the Union. So an awful lot has been experienced by her. And, you know, there are 2 things that I recall quite clearly. One was that this was a reluctant queen. You know, although she knew that royal duties were in front of her, she never grew up with the intention or the possibility of her being the monarch. And so to some degree, her rulership was thrust upon her. And you can see the decision that she made. She decided that she was going to fulfill this role. And I think from the moment of making that decision, whoever she really was disappeared so far into the background as to become almost undetectable. In fact, on the number of occasions when I met her, there were 2 impressions that I had. One was that this is a person who has created the external persona that's necessary to navigate the role. And it's very, very difficult to go past that and get a glimpse of the real Elizabeth. I remember feeling that this is a person who reminded me of a bird in a gilded cage, that she had created this gilded cage around her because that's what the nation in her mind needed, and in doing so had imprisoned her own essence and her own uniqueness. So she then had made that conscious decision, as far as I can tell, to fulfill the demands of the role that she found herself in. And that was present throughout. I said the number of occasions when I had the brief opportunity to meet her, it was very difficult to get past any sort of sense that there was an individual conversation possible. And I think the majority of people who met her met the Queen. Very, very few, I don't think, had a chance to go beyond that. So that's the person who has just expired. There is a dimension which I think we all have to, perhaps even in passing, just gently acknowledge. And that was that she was born into a time that inherited an empire built on slavery, built on exploitation, and by and large established upon violence. And she came into it at a time when it was clearly declining. The force, the power, and the ruthlessness of the British Empire, the monarchy, and indeed the armed forces, they had held the empire together using force, and it was slowly squirreling away from them. It was disappearing. The ravages of the World War were times that she had navigated and witnessed the gradual fraying of this empire, this identity. And I think what we will be seeing is probably the end of empire. I think that has closed. That chapter would have been closed. I mentioned that she had created this gilded cage around herself and to some degree imprisoned herself in it. I like to think of this gilded cage as the British identity. You know, she became the British identity. She became what everybody identified as being British. And she sustained and held that identity for a long period of time. That identity, I think, also has been laid to rest with her. And I don't think that that identity is going to be shouldered. That mantle is not going to be taken in any way to the same degree by Charles or indeed anybody else who comes afterwards. So we're truly witnessing the passing of a person who sustained the idea, the grand narrative, the great British story. She sustained it throughout her life. And I think now that she has passed, that will also be, shall we say, gently put to rest. The future is going to leave a great deal of stories to be told and to be reconciled, but that's a future that will have to be navigated by her successor.
Thank you, Panditji. That was a brilliant take on a very usual topic, a very different take, as I suspected. Your lens they're always positioned at a very vantageous position with your vast experiences.
Well,
Just
I was,
moving-
Shikanti, I was just looking at the span of her life, and it struck me that I've also had quite a long span in this country, and so that gives me a bit of an advantage in that I have memory of many things that are from the earlier part of her reign and other times as well. So, no, thank you for your appreciation. There's much, much more that we have to talk about yet, though.
and many things, as I mentioned earlier, we are waiting for the longer version, Panditji. So on introspection, and since yesterday it's been a very unusual few hours of the last evening, and when I woke up to the thoughts of the Queen's passing. The Queen is many things to many people, Panditji. She personifies a sense of duty to some, while to others she may be an agency of care, central care. But her role as a unifier in the Northern Ireland peace process is unquestionable, and so was her involvement in the World War II as a driver and a mechanic for the home units. This concept of Seva and the Queen, what are your opinions, Panditji?
Okay. Well, you know I'm a bit of a stickler for precision when it comes to language and terminology. Seva and duty or service in this context of the Queen are two different things. From our point of view, Seva is to be done selflessly, but it's also to be done anonymously. And so Seva is a separate idea, but there is definitely a thread of service in what she had done. As I mentioned to you, that she made this conscious decision of what the nation needed and then gave herself to that vision wholeheartedly, irrespective of what the cost or sacrifices on a personal level she might have to make. And that, I think, is one of the most outstanding features of her commitment and of her service. And that, I think, is also something that has endeared her to the British population more than anything else. The aspect of anonymous service doesn't really apply when it comes to the royals. They have to be very, very much apparent. And her involvement in Northern Ireland and her involvement in other parts of the world, I think there are question marks over many of those issues. When we have the notion of seva, we have seva to dharma, which is the greater good. Sarva dharma is a fundamental part. And we have this notion in Punjabi and other traditions of sarvata bhala, which is what's good for everybody. But that's not really what a regent or a monarch is required to do. She had as her duty the benefit of this country. She had the benefit of the Church of England, of which she was the titular head of the Church of England. So she was very clear in terms of who her duty and her obligations lay to. And the Northern Ireland situation is very, very complex. Some of your viewers may have heard that in Northern Ireland last night, there were many instances where people were lighting fireworks. Remember, there is a very strong sense that Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland were the first, shall we say, constructs. The first toolkit of partition was tested, tried, and then deployed in Ireland. And there are wounds that are still very, very apparent. And so that's an area that we can explore a little bit further in the next talk as well. But there's no doubt at all, she had a vision of what her obligation was to the nation. She wanted the well-being of the nation, and she executed and delivered on that duty in a manner which is exemplary. If everybody had the clarity of vision of what their nation, their family, their society, their community, their civilization needed, and put in the same level of contribution and commitment to it, then Bharat would be a different place in the context of Bharat. So yes, she certainly demonstrated that loyalty and that sense of duty to the United Kingdom, to Great Britain, and to the idea of a Britain leading the world.
Very interesting, very interesting. Not only are you a stickler to a very precise definition of terms and vocabulary, but you've created a few for many of the youngsters who follow you across the world. Your service, just to talk about it, yes, you spoke about the Queen's duty, but your service to really giving wings and aspiration to people's hidden ideas and thoughts has been absolutely brilliant. And I've been one such beneficiary. And yeah, seva is not charity, and kartavya may be closer to duty. And just moving on, while one Elizabeth departs, and the nation is mourning, and for the next 10 days we are in that mode. Another Elizabeth takes over as the prime ministerial, as a prime minister candidate no more. There is this take of prime minister being Pradhan Sevak versus Pradhan Mantri. So your views, it's a bit political
Well,
now.
it's worth exploring, because her first few days have actually been probably the hardest few days of a new prime minister in living memory. As one Liz came in and another Liz is moving out, some political comedians have mentioned that the movement of both of the Liz's is cause for mourning, that the appearance of this new Liz Truss as prime minister is equally worthy of mourning. But she has, it's a very strange situation. I don't think we have seen such a naive person become prime minister. There is a sense of innocence, a sense of the desire for the greater good, but underlying it, there is a really very large question mark over competence, and that I think is a cause for concern. She has made a number of decisions. She's appointed a new cabinet, and looking across the people who are seated around the cabinet table now, there are some very odd choices. The lady who has been given the portfolio for health, for example, is not the epitome of health by any means. A cigar smoking person who has a history of enjoying sometimes to excess the nectar, the amber nectar as they call it, doesn't spring to mind as being the right person to motivate and to guide a health service. So there are some serious concerns there. Let's see how it pans out. It's so early in her premiership. There will be a period of learning. There will be a period of making ridiculous mistakes. There will be a period of becoming familiar with the territory. We saw her at the dispatch box for the first time in the House of Commons. She did very well, and so she'll settle into the role. And let's see what time gives her. But yes, you're right. One Elizabeth departs, and a regent, a monarch disappears, and somebody else takes the reins of the country. It's quite coincidental. On the same day in Bharat, we had the former, the statue of King Edward, which used to sit at India Gate, Rajpath. It's disappeared. And there's been an empty slot there for a while. And we have Subhash Chandra Bose installed. And that is a new inspiration for the nation, isn't it? It's the conclusion of one of those places where colonialism was the means by which the Indian population were going to be inspired and conditioned and given certain sanskara. And now what we have is a whole new set of sanskaras appearing. So turmoil and change everywhere, but I think it's all for the good. It's all for the good.
Very interesting, and thank you so much, for even taking us to Bharat, though notionally. But as we discussed earlier, and as you have brought in your discussion now, two women, we can definitely not undermine their power. I mean, one is one you've just now given a commentary on the prime minister, but the Queen was a woman, was a mother, was a grandmother, was many things to many people, and her role was probably because she was part of a family. One may say, it was not in Sanskrit they say yoga versus yogyata. One is a qualification that you earned, and one is the place you are. It could be geography, it could be family, it could be genealogy, whatever. So, but yes, it's a very sad event that we've lost the Queen yesterday evening. 96 years, and she was also saddened by the loss of her husband. And my last question, and the safest way to exit out of the many logic that you have, and abundant knowledge you have, and exposure to these topics, is to get your views on the legacy of the throne, the future of the throne, and the legacy, the vast legacy that the Queen has left, apparently, going by the multitude of messages on the social media, Panditji.
Yeah. When she took over a period of leadership, she remarked that the Commonwealth was not the empire. And we've seen that transition occurring. I think from 70 ruled dominions, it's down to about 14, and even that's going to dramatically diminish over the next few years. So the ages of kings and monarchs, I think, is over. I think there are some residual issues to be dealt with in terms of a transition, but the people know too much about monarchs now. The mystique has disappeared. That carefully coiffured sort of persona, it doesn't withstand scrutiny. We have seen Andrew and his misdemeanors.
Indeed.
A huge impact it had on the position of the monarchy. Charles has at times behaved in a manner which was perhaps not what the population expected. And so that mystique, once it's evaporated, it can't be recreated. It takes far too much. And so I see the disappearance of monarchies. This particular monarchy has a lot of prayaschit to do, and we'll talk more about that in our subsequent talk. But there is a realignment of leadership going on in the world. We're seeing the East rise again. You know, China and India always led the world in terms of GDP until the Euro-Christian pirates sort of ventured and took the concept of manifest destiny and the doctrine of discovery into these places. And it's taken 200-300 years for that to really be survived and now a revival occur. And I think this whole shifting in the way in which humanity is working is long overdue. It'd be great if we can be co-partners, the East and the West can be co-partners in moving into this new reality and trying to reconcile the horrors of the Euro-Christian expansion voluntarily and as partners into a better future. But I have a suspicion that that's unlikely to happen. It's not visible at this moment in time. But we will explore all of the fault lines and the particular aspects which will impact upon this. So yes, we could well have seen the last monarch of this country take to the throne over the last few days.
Interesting. Absolutely interesting. Prayaschit. I'm not sure if you would equate that to atonement, but surely for the larger video and presentation that you'll be bringing about. So pranams to you, Satish
Thank you.
Sharma.
It's my pleasure, Shrikantji. And let's, on behalf of Chitti Media and Festival of Bharat and the other media channels that we're supporting and working with, I'm sure everybody would like to send their condolences at the level of a family to the royal family and send them our best wishes for a speedy settlement on this whole issue. Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram. Namaste.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.